There is a new paper out of Hanover Medical School in Hanover, Germany. In and of itself, it's not too surprising, but the implications are extraordinary. You may want to pause this video right now and get yourself a shot of old granddad, because this video is about to ruin your whole day. So recently, in Germany, many teenagers have been going to their doctors and being diagnosed with Tourette's-like symptoms. They're having Tourette's. Sudden onset Tourette's? And so many. Turns out they're displaying the symptoms of Tourette's that their favorite YouTuber also happens to have displayed. So they're kind of copying their favorite YouTuber. There's this guy by the name of Jan Zimmerman. He has a channel called Gewitter im Kopf. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It basically means thunderstorm of the brain. In English. That's the English translation. Thunderstorm of the brain. Now, doctors say that Jan does have mild Tourette, but that he is totally playing it up for camera. And then people are copying him.
Willkommen zu einem neuen Video. Es wurde ja langsam auch mal wieder Zeit. Pommes! Heute machen wir einen kleinen Ausflug, gemeinsam mit dem Tourette-Syndrom natürlich. Und zwar in den Kölner Zoo. Wir ficken Elefanten. Tourette!
Fantastic. Researchers are calling this a mass social media induced illness. Mass social media induced illness. It's a social media version of a mass sociogenic illness, or mass hysteria, and they're surprisingly not that uncommon. One famous example occurred in the Middle Ages with the dancing plagues. This happened when, under a period of extreme stress, this one woman started dancing uncontrollably, and then more people came and they saw her dancing, and then they started dancing, and soon dozens of people were dancing for months at a time. They danced themselves to death. Not all of them, but some of them danced themselves to death, and the doctors had no idea what was going on. I don't think medieval doctors knew much of anything. They blamed it on witches and demons and all this other stuff, but they really didn't know. It was mass hysteria. It went away one day, and it was brought on by the severe stress of just being alive at that time. And you gotta think, back in the Middle Ages, like, a lot of things could kill you, so why not die by dancing? I know how I'm going out, okay? If it's the plague or dance myself to death, I'm totally gonna dance myself to death. Stress. Stress, stress, stress. Stress is the silent killer. But stressed out people aren't that silent. They're actually quite ornery. They're pretty vocal about their stress. I don't know why they call it the silent killer. Maybe that we don't understand the stress that is within our lives, and so we don't attribute our health problems to stress. But you really got to watch out for stress. You really got to get those 8 hours of sleep. Anyway, in times of stress, mass sociogenic illnesses are more common. There's a famous case you might remember out of Leroy, New York in 2012. I'll probably have to do a whole video on that because it is just so interesting. Basically, their cheerleading team and then some other people as well started having these symptoms. They were fainting, they were having seizures, they went on TV and people were like, what is causing this? Is it toxins? Is it this? Is it that? It turns out these girls were under extreme stress, and it was manifesting itself physically in their bodies. Now, the difference between the dancing plague in the Middle Ages and Leroy, New York, and what is going on now with Jan Zimmerman is that what's going on right now has been spread through social media. People didn't come through and personally witness him having these Tourette's-like symptoms. They're not actual friends of his. They know him and they saw it only through social media, which means it's not confined to his personal environs. It can happen anywhere in the world to anybody that is watching him. I suppose it is confined by language. I'll say that, because if you don't speak German, you're not going to be a fan of this person. If you're not a fan of this person, you wouldn't be displaying these Tourette-like symptoms. However, something similar happened in Canada. So basically what we see now, what we're seeing and what is becoming apparent is that mass hysteria can be spread via social media. Some of you at home were like, duh. Well, they made a paper, so I'm reporting the paper. You already knew, we already knew, but whatever. Just reporting what I saw. We have proof. It's proof. Is it not proof? Proof is important.
Lisa, everyone's already figured that out.
Could you imagine? You got to deal with all this COVID stuff anyway. You got to homeschool your kids. And now your child is sick. They're ill. and you don't know how to fix them, and you drive around from doctor's appointment to doctor's appointment to doctor's appointment, getting scan after scan to find out what's wrong with them because your own flesh and blood is ill, and then you find out that they're basically faking it. They're faking it because they saw a guy online and now they think it's cool. These parents are saints. If these children are still alive, these parents are saints. That's all I got to say on the subject. Like I said, I get the dancing plagues. I totally understand. We've all been at a club and the DJ is just killing it and you get caught up in the dance and you dance all night and you just don't know where the time went. There's fun in that. But this, I don't see the fun in it. However, they are successfully able to avoid chores by acting up. They get attention and they avoid chores. So maybe that's the fun in it. I personally don't understand it. But like I said, I find these children insufferable. This is not a medical channel. Yes, I judge. Jan Zimmerman is influencing these kids to do this thing, and he's an influencer. What do influencers do? Influence people. He's doing exactly what his job description says he's supposed to do. So that's on us for allowing these influencers to have so much influence over society and for allowing them to go directly into the teens' brains. And that's not to say that adults don't get sucked into cults all the time. It just doesn't make any news when they take their kids down with them. But wait, there's more. Did you trust the medical establishment to accurately diagnose these kids? Well, think again, because they didn't. They diagnosed them with Tourette's. And then they said, this is actually interesting what they really said. They said, all of these patients had been pre-diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, partly even as treatment-resistant Tourette syndrome, after having received pharmacotherapy with different drugs, including antipsychotics. Now, I don't know if they were already on antipsychotics and then they came down with these Tourette-like symptoms, or they were given antipsychotics as a result of these symptoms. I would like to learn more about that. If you have any more information, please let me know. Now, I don't think that these individually were bad doctors. What probably happened is that they were seeing one patient. And they said, this one patient has these Tourette's-like symptoms. We're going to diagnose him with this, and so forth and so on. But this institute was getting all of the patients, so they could see the pattern. So I know I was a bit harsh a minute ago, but no, I do not blame these individual doctors. What I do blame, of course, is social media, and I think that it is really convenient that they were able to go to one place so that we could actually figure out what was happening, because this could have gone on if they stayed in their own little bubbles and we never would have figured it out. Now, their behavior wasn't quite Tourette's, though. The authors actually describe why here. They say that the onset was abrupt, not slow. So they apparently watched these videos and decided to abruptly annoy everyone in their vicinity. So that's good. Also, symptoms were constant instead of waxing and waning, as is typical in Tourette's. They were blinking normally and clearing their throats. Basically, these kids needed to take an acting class, because they weren't really selling the Tourette's. They were kind of lazy. These were lazy children. Could you imagine if in Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman didn't really stick to his character? If he were just saying, oh, this is how I assume how an autistic person should act, and he didn't do his real research, and he didn't take the classes, he didn't put in the work to give a good performance. This is what I'm seeing from these children. These are lazy, lazy children. Take an acting class. Go method. If you don't believe it, how are we going to believe it? Because I'll go with the next person. I'll go with the understudy. This is trash. The authors note that their movements were complex and located at eyes and body instead of face, and they had too much variety in their actions. Basically, their behavior was not typical of Tourette's. Also, let's note that their Tourette's behavior started when they had something to do that they didn't want to do, like clean their room, like do homework. And then the symptoms just miraculously stopped when they had to do something that they did want to do, like eat dinner or go see their friends. So very convenient Tourette's here. Can you just imagine if this is one of your siblings and you have to do all their chores because they're being annoying? I wouldn't let my sibling forget this for the rest of their life. First off, socks for Christmas forever, because you might love them, but do you like them? And then I'd bring it up at Christmas dinner well into their 40s. I don't care if their children are there. I'm going to bring up the year that they pretended to have Tourette's so that they didn't have to do any chores. Speaking of mass sociogenic illnesses, it's actually more common in females than in males. It just happened to be a 50-50 split with Mr. Zimmerman's fans because he's male. And so his followers are going to trend male. But in the situation in Canada and in other situations that we have seen, it's mostly female. Think The Crucible. Arthur Miller, think The Crucible. Salem witch trials. We are going to have an entire video dedicated to Salem because we're in the middle of mass hysteria. And if we're talking about mass hysteria, we're talking about witch burnings. And if we're talking about witch burnings, we're talking about bite-sized candy for Halloween. So we're talking about stress. Now, some of you out there will say that when we are talking about societal problems, we are always talking about stress in one way or the other. Stress is the conflict that keeps the story going. Regardless, stress is very damaging. And also, the COVID restrictions have increased stress just that much, especially for young people. Young people, Gen Z, are already under a lot of stress from the climate.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah, 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 blah.
And so what does this say about Western society? Actually, there's a fantastic line in this. Oh my God. Functional Tourette's-like symptoms can be regarded as the modern form of the well-known motor variant of MSI, mass hysteria. Moreover, they can be viewed as a 21st century expression of a culture-bound stress reaction of our postmodern society, emphasizing the uniqueness of individuals and valuing their alleged exceptionality, thus promoting attention-seeking behaviors and aggravating the permanent identity crisis of modern man. Basically, people need attention, and everyone's supposed to be unique, but most people aren't that unique. What are we going to do about it? Did you ever see that movie Pontypool with Stephen McHattie? It's a zombie movie and it's fantastic. This is an actor, okay? Tourette's kids, watch this movie, take some notes. This is how a real actor acts. Anyway, he's in a radio station. He's broadcasting this whole time and he's broadcasting during this zombie apocalypse. And it's dramatic and there's fantastic acting. And then we get to the end and we hear that the zombie plague is spread via words. Boo, 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 boo. I watched that and I was like, this is the dumbest thing I have ever seen. Why did I watch to the end of this movie? Cut to 2020 and basically Tourette syndrome was spread by sound and sight. So was Pontypool that dumb? I still think it was a little dumb. I love the performance, but I guess not. Maybe reality is a little dumb. It seems as though reality is a little dumb right now. So why these kids and not others? He had millions of followers, but millions of kids didn't come down with Tourette's. So what happened? Well, it could be that these kids were a little weak-minded already. Some already had slight Tourette's. It could mean that these kids were under particular stress. We don't really know why it pops off in some and not others. It just does. In Leroy, we know that the girls, the cheerleaders who were suffering from this fainting, from these seizures, actually had really volatile home lives. They were under a lot of stress. So it could be the case with this too. I am obsessing over case studies right now because how could you not? To me, this is especially interesting because it touches on something that we have discussed on this channel. We talked about it in the Amusing Ourselves to Death video. We discussed it with Dr. Donald. It's that people copy what they see. Now, in Amusing Ourselves to Death, they copied what they saw on TV. Back in the day, we're not going to let this guy on TV because they had produced shows. We're not just going to let him broadcast whatever he wants. So now we're in a different medium. And this is what is happening. We're humans. We copy what we see. That's how we are socialized. We're supposed to do that so that we don't stand out from the pack too much. But when does that turn sinister? Also, the last thing I will say about this is that I suspect we're seeing a lot more different kinds of mass hysteria spread over social media. So to wrap all this up, people can spread mind viruses through the phone that will seriously mess up your life. And I know my viewers are way too smart to actually fall for this stuff, but if someone in your family does fall for it, well, you're out of luck. You gotta drive them places and you have to do all their chores. So watch out for it. Subscribe.